I think Ed Henry's specialness to the show is that he doesn't have a theme.
Okay.
Like everybody has a theme, but Ed Henry really doesn't have a theme. And maybe that's part of his theme, that he doesn't really have a theme. That because Ed Henry is a reporter, right? Mm-hmm. More than a commentator. And so, much like the story changes, I believe that the song that intros him should change every time. So I've been fitted in. So Ed Henry is themeless because he's an objective reporter and shall not be penned in by a theme.
But I thought there was a theme with a bunch of drunks. Is that Sinatra?
Yeah, that's Sinatra, actually. Yeah, I've been using that. That's kind of been a signature of the show.
I love that. And I was wondering why you kept playing it right before I came on.
No. Yeah, people who might be new to the show might think that it's actually directed towards them. But no, it actually, and I love this because it came from actually Sinatra Live at the Sands, which is
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Oh, it's a great one. And this comes from his little monologue midstream. And when he comes out, he says, "What are you all doing in my room?" That kind of thing. It's really just classic Sinatra. Before we get to the FISA memo thing, Ed, sure. I want to ask you, I was curious. I'm glad everybody's safe in the train wreck, and I get all of that. I'm surprised people haven't actually used the term train wreck yet. They will eventually on the weekend shows. They'll try to shoehorn in a reference to a train wreck and Republicans. I get that. But who pays for these retreats down to a place like Greenbrier?
There'd probably be some combination of, say, in this case, you had House and Senate Republicans. They do have some budgets that taxpayers fund, but I think sometimes if they're going to be doing some, political talks and whatnot, they would have the National Republican Senatorial Committee or the Republican Congressional Committee, which are sort of political committees where they raise outside Republican money. The Democrats have the same. That would kick some money in as well. But, I mean, if they're traveling on an official basis to go and have meetings, I'm sure that they use some taxpayer money, but I think both parties have these kinds of retreats and will also use some outside political money if they're having dinners and things like that.
Yeah, because I noticed a lot of them had their families with them, and so I was just wondering about that. But I'll tell you, the Greenbrier, have you been there before?
I actually haven't. I really wish. It's not that far from Washington. A lot of people go there for weekends and really love it, and for some reason I haven't been there. And it's just supposed to be fabulous.
Yeah, I went there when I was at a local TV station here, and I did a story on the Greenbrier. It was post 9/11, and went down there and did a story about their underground bunker, their duplicate capital, basically in the bunker there. It's pretty fascinating.
Yep. Yeah, they were basically, if Armageddon happened, well before 9/11, going back to the U.S.-Soviet standoffs in the Cold War, and from reporting the story, they had like a second capital underground so that they thought they could get, the House and the Senate onto trains or whatever and get them out of town and to the Greenbrier a few hours away from Washington. And, then it got exposed at some point as being maybe a little bit silly, and the taxpayer money had been used to build this thing and all of that, and it just kind of sat idle. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it really is fascinating. It's like right out of, and nothing really has changed down there. It's right out of the 50s. And I love how Eisenhower made sure that 68 just ran right through there,
he did something else that's fascinating in the Washington area, which is Eisenhower like golf at the Burning Tree Golf Club, which is men only, and the Washington Beltway, which, goes around Washington, Maryland, Virginia, and all. It goes right by Burning Tree, and it was supposed to go basically right through the golf course. If you ever play it, there's a hole where all of a sudden, the Beltway is sort of ringing the hole. Well, when you're driving, it's more dramatic because instead of driving through the golf course, you take a wide turn around the course. And they say that back in the 50s, that was one of the benefits of being president. And I guess there wasn't Twitter and social media to say, wait a second, let me take a screenshot of the piece of paper that says Eisenhower doesn't want to on a highway going through his golf course. But basically, when you're on this highway, it takes a dramatic turn around the golf course because Eisenhower made sure that they didn't build it right through his golf course. Pretty funny.
Yeah, to the victor go the spoils, right?
Exactly.
So this FISA memo, interestingly enough, I'm curious because you guys have been talking about this very objectively, and I appreciate that. I'm interested in how the media seems to automatically take the side, or not like some people in the media automatically take the side of the FBI. I think most Americans would like to at least see what's in this, and then we can decide whether or not.
Yeah, and also some of the media are taking the side of the Democrats on the committee. I mean, more than taking the side of the FBI. I mean, if you look at the chyrons on CNN for the last few days, it's been saying partisan memo to be, released because it's being put together by the Republicans. But CNN and others had no problem when, a partisan dossier was put together, with money from the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign and leaked to CNN and BuzzFeed and others with unverified information about Donald Trump, which is what this memo is sort of really about. So if there's a memo about what happened, it's partisan. But the actual, actually what happened, which is allegedly from this memo that the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign paid for this dirt that was unverified on Donald Trump, and Obama administration officials might have bent the rules a bit, or maybe even bent the law in order to spy on Trump officials to get more dirt, perhaps. And that may be how this whole Russia-Trump investigation started. They had no problem publishing some of that material and talking about that months ago that got this whole investigation started. So I just think people kind of reveal themselves in these kinds of stories. Yeah, no, that's true. And so what would be the timing? I know there are some people saying it could be released today, but does some kind of vote have to happen since... No. So the timing is that on Monday, the House Intelligence Committee had a vote, and that's where, the real fiery stuff started happening at the beginning of this week because there was a vote. And the Republicans have the majority on that committee, and they voted to publicly release this, and the Democrats didn't have the votes to stop it. But as part of House rules, basically, anything with sensitive information, it has 5 days for the president to say, no, I don't want that being released, or I want this redacted, this paragraph or this sentence. And then if he doesn't object, it could be released. So basically, the clock started ticking on Monday, which is why everybody is signaling that it sounds like we're going to see it today, but as a fallback, definitely tomorrow. And maybe it won't be the whole memo, but it'll be definitely, because there could be some blacking out of sentences and stuff with sensitive information. But look, enough hype has been there. I think, again, to be fair and balanced here, I'm not just going to, take on the Democrat. The Republicans have talked a good game about how this is explosive. Some who have seen it have said it's worse than Watergate in terms of government abuse by Obama officials. Let's see the memo in whatever form is appropriate for the public. And I think you said the best thing, which is let the chips fall where they may. Let the public decide whether this was a Watergate type scandal or whether the Republicans have exaggerated it. Yeah, and so if this is released today, how should we approach this? Are we to believe that everything in there is correct, or are we to take it with a grain of salt? And who are we to? We have to take anything put out. Back to my point about some people calling this a partisan memo. Yes, the memo was put together by Republicans. You have to take that with a grain of salt. They have. A side here. There are some Republicans on that Intelligence Committee who appear to want to kind of vindicate President Trump and say that, this whole investigation has been unfair. But, so take it with that grain of salt. But if they present evidence that suggests that this investigation was a sham in some way, I think they should be heard, right? So that's why I think what you said about the chips falling where they may is really where we should be. That's how we should approach it, which is, the Republicans have to put up or shut up now. They've been saying that there's something really explosive here, so let's see it. And then the Democrats like Adam Schiff and others who have just gone on and on with these partisan attacks against the president and against the Republicans on the committee, it's time for him to put up or shut up as well. He said that there's inaccuracies in here. Show us what's inaccurate. Show us what is not true about the Obama administration's surveillance of Trump officials. So I think it's time for both sides to put up or shut up. Do your reporter instincts indicate that we will know, if we hear what's in the memo, why Andrew McCabe left? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's McCabe and other officials like James Comey are going to have some explaining to do about why they signed off on these FISA warrants to a judge when the bar is supposed to be very high in terms of evidence that we need to listen in on this person's phone calls because of X. One of the bottom line questions is going to be, when James Comey signed that document, Andrew McCabe, if he signed that document, that's the indications we've gotten in terms of surveillance of Carter Page, the Trump foreign policy advisor. Were they using the dossier, which was unverified, or did they have other evidence to corroborate the dossier? Again, that's where you put up or shut up. And the question that Republicans are pointing to is, did Comey, McCabe, and others kind of wink and a nod with the judge? You know, we need to listen in on these calls because we got this evidence here, but it turned out the quote-unquote evidence was just the unverified dossier. That's the implication we've heard from some Republicans. And again, to be fair here, they could be wrong. It could be that Comey and McCabe and others went to the FISA judge and had the dossier, but also had other evidence to corroborate the need to listen in on Carter Page's phone calls. You and I both don't. We don't know. We weren't there when they did this. But the bottom line question is going to be whether or not they misled this judge. And you're right. Final point, it's pretty interesting that Andrew McCabe went bye-bye within hours of the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, getting a look at this memo. Maybe it was unrelated, but Christopher Wray, the FBI director, finally looked at the memo in private on Sunday. And Monday morning, Andrew McCabe is gone. Maybe it's a coincidence, but I'm not so sure it was.
All right, so one quick question then before I let you get away then at this point. So do you believe from a reporter standpoint that when President Trump...
I'm able to go bing, 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 and I take care of it.
Trump tweeted out that he believed that the Obama administration was wiretapping him. Remember that famous tweet?
Yeah.
Was he more right than wrong, or...
I think you were asking a great question that is impossible to answer until we see this memo and, frankly, until we see more evidence. But I do believe, based on the reporting I've done, to answer your question directly, that he was more right than anybody, gave him credit for then. I mean, I think you're right in the way you're asking the question, that at the time the reaction was, this guy's crazy. Nobody was listening in on his calls. And it turns out, well, the Obama administration was listening in on Carter Page's calls, maybe others. Did Carter Page call the president or president-elect? Did he call Trump Tower? Is that what the president was referring to back, I think it was about March, when he said that they had wiretapped Trump Tower? And technically, I think he was wrong when he said wiretap. I think there was some kind of surveillance going on. I think that was the right word. But his implication, as you suggest, may turn out to be more right than wrong.
Wow. Well, people love you, Ed.
That will change the story. That will change the story. But I will also say, this doesn't erase any wrongdoing the president or others may have done, I underline may have done, in terms of the Mueller investigation. And there are some Republicans trying to say, well, this is all fraud, and so there shouldn't be a special counsel and he should be fired. Both sides could have had some wrongdoing here. I'm not saying both sides did, but I think that sometimes this whole zero sum that either McCabe and Comey did the president wrong or the president did something wrong, it could be both. And so that's why I think what you said earlier is the best. Let the chips fall where they may for both sides.
Well, I'll tell you, people love listening to you. We appreciate the illumination. And I know you don't normally take calls from people, but Mary's on the line here. Hang on.
I hope this doesn't bother you, but I've been imagining what you look like naked.
So you're really...
you love these bits. And, the Sinatra drunk bit leading into me. I think that's my theme.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's fine. I'll stick with that then. I'll do. Oh, okay. And then I feel like Columbo. One more question.
Hey, where are the white women at?
All right, Ed. Listen, great talking to you, buddy.
All right. Time for me to go.
Hey, the book is called 42 Faith, the rest of the Jackie Robinson story. It's Ed Henry at Ed Henry.